So there's a lot going on. First of all, there's a light show, and there's a few different layers of MIDI sounds, all at the same time, and all limited to the key of C major or A minor. While it's a complex setup, it makes it easy to improvise musical passages without making any mistakes or playing notes that are out of key, and you can do it all on this one surface on the iTar. I've got it sitting on the desk here just for easier demonstration. This is an iPad Pro, and I've got these two paired together. First, let's get into what's driving this light show. So the iTar can accept commands on MIDI channels 15 and 16 to drive the lighting on the fingerboard. Now let's just solo one channel I've got here. This is one of the, I'm using Cubasis, but you can use Logic Pro or any DAW in your iPad that has a standard MIDI piano roll editor. And if we look at this channel, it's outputting on channel 15, and if you look at what's on the sequence, 6 notes at a time, and they just go up and down, and that's why you see all 6 strings on any one fret. I've got the 6 notes. It goes up and it goes back down. I've got another one in the inverse direction, and that's generating this red line. Now the color of the LEDs is determined by the velocity value that corresponds to the note on message. But rather than in my sequence defining what that value is, I have all the velocity messages set 100% up, or 127. And then as a MIDI effect, I've got the NuRack FX Processor plugin loaded with the MIDI velocity module, and you can see here it'll transform the incoming velocity of all the MIDI notes to a new number. And as I adjust this, you'll see the color of the line change. That way I don't have to change the sequence. I can simply rotate this one knob and I can get those colors to change. I've got one of those on both of these two sequences, so I can get these lines to change colors without having to delve into the sequences. Now additionally, let's turn those off for a second, and here you can see that the fret markers are rotating in color. And again, you can send a note on message. In this case, let's get into the sequence. It's A4, and that is the note that tells this to change color, and again the velocity of that note is what specifies the color. Now in the sequence you can see I just have several notes in a row, and they all have 127 as the velocity value. So again, you go into I have this plugin loaded. Now in this case, to get it to automatically rotate rather than sequencing the notes all with different velocity values, I've got this MIDI velocity module loaded along with an LFO that's linked to that knob. So as it's moving along, this LFO, like a magical hand, is lowering and raising this knob, and therefore each subsequent MIDI note is transmitting with a different velocity value, and that creates this rotation of color effect. If you put all 3 of these together, and you get this whole busy light show going on. Obviously the sequence has to be playing back to see this. Now as far as the musical portion, you can see there's a couple of things going on. First of all, we've got a melody on the upper strings, or a melodic instrument I should say, and it's only on the top 3 strings. The iTar transmits on channels 1 through 6, 1 channel per string. So I have a plugin loaded here on this track for this instrument called StreamByter, and in here I can write a simple bit of code which limits, it's like a channel filter, because Cubasis doesn't have one built in. On each track you can limit it to 1 specific channel but not more than 1. So I put that plugin there so I can get notes from channels 4, 5, and 6 to get. Now if you notice, It only plays notes that are in key, and it silences any notes that are outside of the key, in this case of C major or A minor. I did that to avoid any accidental bad notes. So to achieve that, I have a plugin loaded called ScaleBud, and I have it set to C major. So any notes that aren't in that key just don't get transmitted to the plugin. Now the plugin I'm using for that is Sunrizer, which is sort of like a JP8000 kind of a thing. And that's what I'm playing the upper melody with. Now the rest of it, there's actually 3 layers going on, but you'll notice that it's generating complete triad chords from a single note. And again, they are all correct in diatonic, in the key of C major. So B diminished, C major, all from playing one note. Now this allows you to use just one finger on each hand and play chords with the melody on top of it. Here again, here's a fret that's not in key. And the way this works, again, the first thing I have it hitting is another instance of the StreamByter plugin, which limits the output to channels 1, 2, and 3, so you're only getting the bottom 3 strings. And then it's sent, that's why you don't hear that arpeggiator and everything else in the chords on the upper string. The next thing it goes into is a plugin called ChordPadX. And what this does is it takes incoming MIDI notes and it'll generate entire chords. In this case you can see A, C, and E, just a A minor triad from an incoming A note. I have it set up and mapped. Very simple, this is just all in the key of C major. And so I can play single notes and it generates chords. Makes it a lot easier to play this instrument than having to play all the chords and hold down all the frets. Now from there it goes into 3 separate tracks. To get one single track in Cubasis to multiple other tracks, I am using a MIDI effect here called MIDI Bus. And with that I can just put more instances of this MIDI Bus plugin on all the tracks I want to receive this information, and it routes them. Routes all those messages to those tracks. Now let's take a look at what those tracks are. The first one, let's mute these. It's a pad sound. You hear one single MIDI note is playing a full chord. And that is on the OBXD, which is a Oberheim style synthesizer. Analog pad sound. And next we've got sort of an arpeggiated bass line. And that is King of FM for the sound, but I also have the Rozeta Arpeggio plugin, which is creating the arpeggio from that incoming chord generated by ChordPadX. So you've got one note hitting a chord generator, which hits an arpeggiator, which then hits this synth. The next layer is kind of the similar thing. The chord is hitting an arpeggiator, but this arpeggiator is set to faster speed, and it's playing this Moog Model D in a higher register. So when you combine them, and then while you're playing this chord, you can play melodies on top. And so forth. Let's see those lights.